I want us to look at instantiation versus the singleton approach in a bit more detail and in a way that you can understand. We've already seen one of the main differences is that with a constructor function, you can instantiate as many objects as you like, and each object will be independent. It'll be a brand new object. However, with the object literal syntax, when you go and create an object, it always references the same original object. And this is known in the programming industry, and you can Google it. Singleton. Object literal syntax, you're literally creating a singleton. All that means is that an object can only be instantiated once, and that any references to that object in the future, even if you create a new one, still refers to that same object. Let me show you what I mean. So here we're going to be creating a constructor versus literal. And let's first look at a constructor function. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Let's create a person object. And let's assume we want to give certain default values to this person object. For example, let's say that we want the membership status to be false. And then only once the user goes through the whole sign-up process does it actually become true. Let's also give it a default name, and let's even put in a method in there. Let me show you what I mean. So let's create it via the constructor function, and remember what the two steps are. What's the first step? That's right, the first step is to define our object using the function keyword. The second step is to call that object. So let's do the first step, and that is to define our object. Let's just call our object person. Let's say this membership status is false. And we'll say this name. Let's just give a default name of Wally. And now let's just put in a method here as well to make it more interesting. And let's call this method talk. And in this method, let's just console log, and we'll use template literals. We've been through this before, we know what these are. And we'll just say the membership status of this person's name is this membership status. So there we have it. We have our constructor function object all set up, ready to go. And you remember what the second step was? How do we access this? How do we create a new object? That's right, we instantiate it. You need to instantiate the object before you can use it. And let's say a user comes on our site, and for lack of a better word, let's just call him person1 equals new person. And now what's cool is we have access to all these objects. We've seen this before in our example. So if I just console log person1 and we access the talk method, there we go. Console logs, the membership status of Wally is false. And this is straight out of the box. This is what's really cool about constructor functions. But let me show you the differences now, because that's what this lecture is all about. Let's say a second person comes along. Let person2 equals new person. And let's say this person2 goes through the registration process and he changes his name. And his name isn't Wally, it's John. Well, let me get rid of this. Each person will be, and this is the crux of it, unique. So if we go person1.talk, we've got the membership status of Wally is false. But now, if we go person2.talk, what do you expect would happen? That's right, the membership status of John is false. So now we've literally created two different objects that are independent from each other. I can even go on person2 and I can go person2 membership status. Say they go through the whole membership, they pay their membership fees, and now their membership status is true. You've got two distinct objects. How cool is this? And now you're probably wondering, okay, cool, constructor functions, you've got it, like it's making sense. But how does object literal syntax work? Well, let me show you. And let me show you what I mean by the fact that object literal syntax creates a singleton. Okay, so let's create now literal syntax approach. And let's start defining our object. We've got a person, we've got membership status, and we're going to set that to false as the initial value. We've got name, which we're going to set to Wally as the initial value, and we've got our talk function or talk method. And all that does is console logs the membership status of this name is this membership status. So there you have it. There's our object literal object that we've just created. But how is this different to the first one we just did? Well, let's comment all of this out so we don't get confused. Let's just comment everything out up above and let's start looking at this. How is this different? Well, the first difference is that we can use this object straight off the bat. We don't have to instantiate it first. Let me show you what I mean. So this person, we can access the talk method directly. We don't have to go let person1 equals new person. With the object literal syntax, we can use it straight away. And what I mean by this is a singleton. Well, let me show you. Say we wanted to create Tom that uses this object construct. How do we do it? Well, you can't just call person the same way we did with the constructor function. We can't just say let Tom equals new person. It's going to throw an error. And here we see person is not a constructor. It's literally told us we're not allowed doing that. So what about just saying, well, let Tom equals person? Okay, so it looks like we can do that. Let's console log Tom. And that has accessed all those properties and methods. Cool, that's all good. But let's try change Tom's name. Let's say Tom, his name, and you guessed it, is Tom. And now let's create a second person. Second person comes along called Cindy. And Cindy says, okay, cool. Cindy's name is Cindy. What do you think is going to happen now when we access the talk method on Tom and the talk method on Cindy? Well, let me first do the talk method on Cindy. That's more intuitive. Talk. Let me just console log this out so you don't get confused. There you go. So Cindy says the membership status of Cindy is false. That makes sense. What about if I access the talk method on Tom? Tom, talk. Oh no, it says the membership status of Cindy is false. So it's still referring to Cindy. And this is the point I'm trying to make with object literal syntax, is that it's always working with the original object. So any change you do here will affect that original object. And let me just drive this point home by giving you one more quick example. With the literal notation, you are always dealing with the same object. Ding, 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 singleton. Let's create an original object with name original. Simple. Now let's create a clone, and that just equals the original object. And this clone, we want to give a name of clone. So all we've done now is we've taken the original object, we've created a new variable. Let me just comment all these out so we don't get confused. Original. There you go. So all we're trying to do here, just take a step back, is we've created an original object called original, and we've given it a name of original. We've then defined a new variable that is that object. So you'd almost think intuitively what should happen is you've created a brand new object in memory space that references a brand new object. Then on that brand new object that we think has been created, we give it a new name of clone. So now you would think that there are two objects in memory, one with the name clone and one with the name original. But with object literal syntax, this is the point, it doesn't happen this way. It references the same object. So if I want to access the original object and console that out, look at that. Its name has now been changed to clone. Whew! This has been a very important lecture for you to get, and very few people understand the intricate differences between the two. Let's continue because I do want to show you one more example.